Hello, everyone. This is Jonathan Little. I'm here today with another educational poker hand for PokerNews.com. I hope you're enjoying them. If you are, take a moment to let them know on Twitter at PokerNews. Also, you can leave your comments below the video. Here we are playing in a $2,000 buy-in side event. It's a turbo tournament. Here we open with pocket twos to 2.5 big blinds. And looking at the stack sizes, if everyone has about 20K or less, I would prefer a min raise with this hand. You could conceivably fold it if everyone has 20 big blinds and you think they're going to shove on you a lot, because if we raise this and get shoved on, we have to fold. Yes, you do need to fold pocket twos and maybe even pocket threes and maybe even pocket fours when you make it 2.5 big blinds and get shoved on for 20 big blinds. So this is a spot where we're going to raise and go from there. But I think that this is certainly near the bottom of our range. So I raise, tight aggressive guy calls the big blind, as he should with a decently wide range. And, well, they give it to me. It comes 9-9-2, and our opponent checks. We have a full house. So what you want to ask yourself here is, if we check behind on the flop to slow play, can we very easily get money in, get our entire stack in, our opponent's entire stack at least in, on the turn or the river? And I don't know the answer to that, because notice on the turn, if he checks and we bet 4,000 and he calls, the pot will go up to 14,000. He'll have 14,000 left in his stack, and we can then shove the river. But that is, kind of a big turn bet and also a big river bet. So that's not really ideal. Alternatively, if we bet 2,000 on the flop and then bet something like 4,000 on the turn, then we can shove the river for about a 2/3 pot size bet, and that's going to induce our opponent to call way more often. Also, when we bet this 2,000 chip bet on the flop, some people will lose their minds because you bet so tiny. And also, if he doesn't lose his mind and check raise with 5-4 of hearts or something like that, he may check call with a lot of hands like ace high and king high, which will be great. So this is a spot where I'm definitely betting, and I'm going to bet small in my whole range, because I don't really care if my opponent sticks around with a lot of junk, because if I'm bluffing, we can often bet big on the turn and get him to fold a lot of that junk, so we're just getting a free 2,000 chips. And if we're value betting, we can perhaps play our hands slightly differently versus some players, where we bet small on the turn and extract additional value. So I like this play of 2,000 on the flop. Our opponent does call, so you have to presume his range is probably marginal, although some people will slow play, hands like a 9. Turns a king, which, doesn't really matter. If our opponent had ace high, he's probably going to fold to any bet now. If he had king high, he's never going to fold. If he has a hand like pocket fours, he's probably not going to fold to a small bet. If he has 5-4 of hearts, well, maybe he decides to bluff at this point, but probably not. So anyway, in this scenario, I think we need to bet small. Notice if our opponent has a 9, we're going to be able to stack him no matter what, like I said. So take a look at the pot, right? Pot's going to be 14,000, so it's going to go up to 17,000 after I bet. And our opponent's going to be left with 14,000 on the river. So like I said, he's going to be left with a, 3/4 pot bet on this river. But, we certainly could have bet a little bit more to make it even more attractive for our opponent to call the turn and call the river. It's always a balancing act whenever you have a very strong value hand and you're trying to figure out how to extract value with this exact hand. Not really how to play our range, but how to play our hand. Because you want to make bets that don't let your opponent think folding is an option. And when you bet 1/3 pot, a lot of players are going to look at this and think, well, I can't fold anything, and they're just going to stick around and call. If I instead bet something like 5,000 on the turn, notice that's going to make the pot go up to 20,000 going to the river, and our opponent's going to have only 12,000 left. And while he's going to be more inclined to call a river bet if we do bet 5,000 on the turn than 12,000 on the river, he may be much more inclined to fold on the turn. And that would be a disaster for me, right? Because if he folds all of his marginal junk on the turn, which should be a lot of his range, we don't even have the opportunity to get that river bet, or give him the opportunity to catch up if he has a hand like ace 5 and decides to call the turn bet. And then if an ace comes on the river, he's going to call every time, right? So this is a spot where I think you just want to go a little bit smaller on the turn and then look to shove the river. So let's see if that's what I do. We do 3,500. Our opponent does call, which is great. It's exactly what we want. River's a 4. You'd prefer an ace, or you prefer a queen or something like that. You'd prefer a card that conceivably makes your opponent's range better. Like maybe he has a hand like queen 9. I'm not queen 9. Maybe he has a hand like queen jack, queen 10, or jack 10. So queen would be a pretty nice card. Same with a jack or a 10. If he has a hand like pocket 5s, I guess that those cards would be bad for me. So really, we don't know what cards are bad for me, but we bet so small, and our opponent's range is so wide that we don't really care what happens, because we're in great shape with our hand. So on the river, should we shove or should we bet small? Well, if we bet small, will our opponent ever bluff with that queen high type hands? Probably not, right? Will he call a small bet with ace high? Maybe, maybe not. That's tough to say. If he has a king, it would be a disaster for him just to check call if I bet small. We can definitely get value from that. If he has a hand like pocket fives or pocket sevens, which, maybe he shoved those pre-flop, but maybe he doesn't. If he has a hand like that, we definitely want to shove to get full value from those because those hands probably aren't folding either. So this is a spot where I think we definitely need to go all in. And that is what we do. Our opponent calls, and we are happy. Oh, until we lose. So, whenever you lose in this spot, don't get upset. Understand it was just purely a setup, and there's not much you can do about this scenario. A lot of people in this spot get really angry at themselves, at God, at the dealer, at their opponent, because the king came on the turn. We have to understand, the king's rarely going to come on the turn. And when you get set up, you get set up. I think we played this hand great. We gave ourselves the opportunity to stack our opponent, and we're pretty happy with this. If you want to experience more hands like this with me, not necessarily ones where we get set up and lose, but lots of tricky scenarios that will really teach you how to get better at poker, check out pokercoaching.com. There we have a lot of interactive training quizzes and also in-depth homework questions where we ask you to submit answers to relatively tricky questions on our forum, and I go through and review all those questions in a live webinar. I review your answer personally, tell you what I think about it, and how you can improve your strategy. So if you want to continue getting better at poker, try out the free trial over at pokercoaching.com. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing me get set up and lose. If you like watching other people's misery, you enjoyed it. If you felt pain, try to not feel pain. You shouldn't feel pain when you get set up. That's just part of the game. Be sure to check back next week for another educational poker hand on pokernews.com. Thanks for watching.